Hey there, welcome to episode 97 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I'm your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are a Nevada nonprofit 501c3 public charity. Our purpose is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. If you can't tell, I have a little head cold. Woke up with it this morning. Good times. That wasn't on my wish list. As I'm speaking right now, my right ear is a little clogged up. The eustachian tube appears to be having its way. So we'll see how this comes off. Today is the 24th of December, 2024. It's a Tuesday. It's Christmas Eve. Festivus was the other day. Hanukkah begins tomorrow. Kwanzaa begins on Thursday, as is Boxing Day. And those are the only holidays I have off the top of my head. So thank you for joining on this holiday, or more likely after. Hopefully your holidays went well. Hopefully my voice will sort itself out, or my ear will unclog. That would be nice. Other things not on my list were losing the lottery and any trouble on the streets as a pedestrian. I do have to go to the store before it closes later, so let's get on with it, shall we? Today's episode is called Details. A couple of details. I've kind of touched on these things over the last 2 years. We're actually 2.5 years old. Been working on Innovate for Vegas Foundation since January of 2022. So, really 3 years of effort. But paperwork filed in June, determination of 501c3, tax exempt status, October 2022, retroactive to June. Anyway, dates. Dates are delightful. They're sweet. But let's get on with it, shall we? Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description. In it, you shall find the show notes, and which I will read the summary of, and 4 of the usual links. I didn't add anything in particular for today. Most of the Innovate for Vegas stuff that I'm going to talk about today is available, or will be, through our website, or it's our organization, which has many repositories on GitHub. So some of those will be made more visible through our website. Hey, if I'm going to be homesick, might as well work on that. So let's get on with it, shall we? I had a pause there. My ear was almost ready to go, but it's getting closer. We'll see what happens. Today's summary: there are always details to sort out, especially if you are more than one person and you are planning to do something or make something that may be used by many, or have far-reaching impact, or which might be around for a while. Flip is fun and easy. Dotting and crossing everything is quite the other thing. And that's been my approach to Innovate for Vegas Foundation. Think big. Don't just make it work and then deal with the consequences. Try to go into all this with some plans that are far-reaching, long-lasting, with few surprises. The links for today's episode are, as usual, they're the same as last week. Exactly the same. You can skip ahead probably about 2 minutes. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation homepage, Innovate for Vegas.org, no punctuation other than the .org. So Innovate for Vegas homepage. Like I said, we'll bring some of the stuff like our code of conduct, contributing guidelines, some of our legal history as far as our incorporation, determination with the IRS, our renaming, where that appears in the state entity lookup database, and the tax exempt organization database from the IRS. So we're in all the right places, and we can be found if need be. So we're current, we're up to date, we're all good. So we need to make more of that available, easily visible through our website. So that's on deck. Projectact.info. That's project-act.info. The autonomous cohort transformation, which is ironically what I'm describing today. Now, it's not ironic. That is a fact, though. The conversion of an idea like, hey, we should start a Code for America brigade, or reboot one, as was our case, or start something new since Code for America no longer has brigades. So what do we do? So the Autonomous Cohort Transformation Project, which we conceived in October of 2022, and we named it this. Act, like do something. Autonomous Cohort Transformation, to transform whatever you have into an autonomous cohort of people working as civic volunteers on community elevating projects. Yay. No, that's what we're doing. Over time, it has also become the Autonomous Cohort Tessellation, which we'll get into a little tiny bit. But suffice to say, it's a decentralized methods using easily available technologies that have been around for decades to encourage discovery of other civic volunteer organizations and enable and encourage connection, communication, and collaboration. Pretty neat. Hopefully it'll work. agileforvolunteers.org, all one word, agileforvolunteers.org, to read about our agile methodology as we apply it to civic volunteerism. Not only coders, civic volunteers can take many forms. Not everything is code, not everyone is a coder. Agile was described by and for professional software engineers, programmers. So we're expanding the scope a little bit, and we're stepping way back from the agile industrial complex, enjoying a kind of a fresh start from the original Agile Manifesto and agile thinking of old. Finally, Mastodon for Vegas. We're still not launched yet officially. We'll aim for like before CES. That seems like it would be interesting. We'll find out. And we'll go from there. So it'll be a Mastodon instance focused on the geolocality of the greater Vegas area. Now let us begin. My ear is still giving me trouble. Hang on. Okay, we're a little bit closer. Now, this is my first civic volunteer organization. I have been a part of nonprofit boards and forming nonprofits previously. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation is my very first civic volunteer organization, especially one that exists as a formal, independent nonprofit, public charity, as we do. We did start out initially with a plan to reboot Code for Vegas as part of Code for America. Back in 2022, we first started discussing this with Code for America, Production by Street, with Code for America in about February of 2022. Those plans were thwarted due to some chaos at Code for America. The revisioning? Yeah, I think it was reversioning. Capital R, capital V, revisioning what they wanted from the brigade program. Code for Vegas, was a brigade. About 10 years ago, they shut down. Well, I wasn't part of it then. So the idea was, we can just start it up again, maybe? No. So, and they would eventually sunset their entire local civic volunteer programs, which they called brigades. So Code for Vegas was not actually a brigade, if I recall correctly. It was in existence before the brigade program was formalized. So it was just part of Code for America. By forming our own independent entity, sorry, this is a little weird. Like my ear is reflecting noise back in a weird way. Like noise, like my voice. We had a chance to learn all about how to do such a thing from the ground up, so to speak. And it is something I would recommend to any cohort interested in working in the civic volunteerism space. Be independent. Be your own group. Be your own thing. This is a nonprofit corporation. As it turns out, it is remarkably easy to form a nonprofit corporation in Nevada. This may not be true in your state, but thanks to an often confusing and somewhat broken website here called Silver Flume, because we are the Silver State, because silver figured prominently in the history of Nevada, silver mines. That's a site maintained by the Secretary of State. And the entire process of forming a nonprofit corporation, not necessarily other types, S Corp, C Corp, LLC, LLP, all that, that's different. The entire process to form a nonprofit corporation, maybe 10 minutes. I think it was $100, $50 annual filing fee after that. Pretty easy. Merely forming a nonprofit corporation is only the beginning of the beginning, though. Identifying directors to sit on a board. If you have governance like a president and a treasurer, same thing. You You update your listing for free in 60 days. So once you've formed your corporation, you can recruit interested parties and update your board of director and so on, your listings. There's usually 3 unrelated, as in unrelated by blood, individuals, and it's about the norm for a small nonprofit intent on 501c3 determination. This is the IRS advice. You basically want to avoid having family. I don't know why that's magic, but maybe too much Italian influence here in Southern Nevada. So 501c3 determination would follow, but it's good to kind of get things ready for that. Then there are the small things like bank accounts, a website, getting the word out to those around who might be interested that you even exist, which is strangely that last one has been the most difficult here in Vegas, which is not really geared for civic volunteerism in this way. As I learned from Code for Vegas co-founder and co-captain, also a board member of our organization for the first 2 years, some insights about the road ahead as he had experienced it back in those days. After, I think it was, so we've incorporated in June 2022. I think it was June 16, probably before August, sometime in August, we filed our 1023-EZ. So filing your 1023 to receive a 501c3 determination letter from the IRS, it was actually quite easy, mostly because we took the 1023-EZ route. This places a gross receipts cap at $50,000 per year for the first 3 years of existence. We have come nowhere near that. I think our total donations for the first 2 years have been somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 total, $250 maybe. But again, we really haven't been discovered. We really haven't been reaching out because we're trying to build the organization, which is in itself a challenge. So we don't really need piles of donation cash. Once we received our determination letter, we really only need to file our 990 tax return each year. Since we have our gross receipt cap, we merely indicate that we received less than $50,000 of donations. So after the first 3 years, we'll switch from filing the 990-EZ, which is the postcard, to possibly the 990 if we actually begin making donation receipts appear as we start deploying things. The only extra effort we needed to take care of with our nonprofit and with our IRS records was our name change from Code for Vegas Foundation to Innovate for Vegas Foundation, which was merely paperwork. It took time for the paperwork and the filings to go through. And of course, Nevada always needs a filing fee. I think that was another $50. There are always fees hiding somewhere in Nevada, but in the end, it was pretty painless. For being a properly determined 501c3 organization, you get free stuff, gratis resources. Some companies will call something free for nonprofits. There's a free for nonprofits plan at Google. What they actually almost always mean is free for 501c3 public charities or charities in general. You can't be educational. That's a different service. But essentially, they intermingle nonprofit and 501c3. This is a common misconception. Nonprofit is a state designated, and even on the IRS website, they intermingle the terms. You file your paperwork in the state in which you are creating your nonprofit entity, and you form whatever is required. You form an LLC, you form a nonprofit corporation, you form whatever it is. So in your filing, you make sure that the state, the Attorney General, Secretary of State, whoever's overseeing that, records your entry in the database for the public record that you are operating as a nonprofit or not-for-profit business entity in the state. When you file your 1023 or 1023-EZ, that is specifically for a 501c3 charity. If you're going to file some other 501A designation, you file a 1024. So 1023, you file that. And somewhere, I can never find the link again, the IRS makes the distinction that the state nonprofit is not the same as the IRS tax-exempt designation for 501c3. So just to be clear about that. It's notoriously true of Google, like I said. Others like GitHub, as far as offering free for nonprofits or Google Workspace for nonprofits, you have to be a 501c3. And why that's important is you are a nonprofit the moment you file your paperwork in Nevada. Boom, nonprofit. You must receive your 501c3 determination from the IRS, which takes at least 2 months. So if you were thinking of getting some free stuff like free email for your members and so on, you got to wait a couple months. And then you have to go through and say, oh, okay, we have our domain, we have our Google Workspace account, and they'll convert it over. So that's actually more tedious than the other paperwork. Others like GitHub are more flexible, though sending over our determination letter made it a snap to get our free team tier. But they will, and if you read through their free for nonprofit thing, it's actually free for nonprofits. They consider it on a case by case. So even if you're a club and you're working on some interesting open source projects or things like this, they seem to be willing to work with you, and offer you free stuff, which is nice. I mean, we're not making maximal use of GitHub at this time, but it's nice that it's there. And it's nice that it's there, and it's nice that they are as supportive. We do have a Project Act organization that is also in the free team tier, so we get free services, even though Project Act is only a project that we're working on as part of Innovate for Vegas Foundation. It's an initiative, but I explained that we're basically the fiscal sponsor for it, and they were like, oh, okay, done. So they seem to be responsive too, which is nice. That was not true 2 years ago, but I think GitHub has caught up with their requests. There are a few more free services that we take advantage of. Canva for some creativity. They gave us a free account for like up to a dozen users or something. We have a reduced fee rate on Stripe. If you would like to donate to our cause, you can visit our homepage and click the donate button. And there are others that I'm not recalling at the moment, but we have a few things we get for free. And certainly GitHub and Google Workspace, we do use them daily, not to their full potential. There are many services available via TechSoup, for example, and directly and often locally that can help with getting a nonprofit public charity focused on civic volunteerism up and running. Definitely look into wherever you are. Look into that wherever you are. If you're curious or if you need something, there's usually a way to negotiate. Working on policies. Some of the core principles that enable a civic volunteer organization need to be codified in things like a code of conduct policy, available in a prominent place to all comers and applicable to anything from virtual online meetups to hackathons, in-person or virtual, to discussions, probably in forums or other similar, around actual volunteer effort. So if you're going to discuss an element of a project or an initiative or a meetup or something, code of conduct always applies. Another important item is how we interact with minors and minor participation. That is sort of a code of conduct issue, but it's a special carve out. If we assume that the future of any local innovator population is today in high school or so, maybe younger, then we must be aware of safe spaces and protected interaction between minors and adults. That's just, of course. There is tremendous opportunity for mentoring and learning on both sides of our volunteer pool. Don't think just because you've been around for a while that you don't have something to learn from someone who hasn't, and vice versa. No boomers here. There is that tremendous opportunity, but the younger end of the pool still needs particular attention, and this applies to any organization working with young people, so it's not just what we're doing. We want to enable that learning experience, the mentor-mentee style of engagement, the benefits that come from collaboration across different skill sets and experience levels and age and culture, all that. But it has to be done so there's no impropriety or no concerns about. And there always will be, but you have to be careful. So we are. Another important policy decision to make early on, though this one could change, is what sorts of initiatives to pursue. Are we taking direction from municipal partners or non-government organizations? Are we working more broadly with a more diverse collection of project sponsors? Or do we take the approach that we are taking with Innovate for Vegas, where we drive our own initiatives and can pursue spin-off monetizable startups of sorts, deploying working initiatives for people to use and support. And of course, the people that were working on them as volunteers can continue to work on them, kind of first refusal, continue to work on them when we can monetize them. So you can work for free, but I don't want you to. But you should be willing to work for free, and then we'll see if we can spin these off into possible returns on investment. Essentially, our initiatives are little startups. They're just very little. But that's how you start. Contributing. Believe it or not, codifying a collection of policy specifics around contributing or contribution to our initiatives is more complicated than one might think. Writing a contributing document. I'm tricking myself. Contributing.md or contributing in all capitals. These are common files you'll find in repositories, especially in the open source world, and it tells people what are you getting yourself into by adding your efforts to the mix. So it's common, especially for open source projects. It's normally more focused on a particular project or a collection of projects making up an initiative. We have multiple initiatives, so our contributing document is sort of broad, tries to be inclusive of some variables as well, while there is often a focus on the software developer population of contributors to open source projects. We are specifically avoiding such specificity, instead hoping to draw in creators and volunteers with a variety of interests and skill sets, so that our initiatives can be more than simple mobile applications. Could be anything. I'd really like to see some physical manifestations, people who would like to manufacture a thing, or maybe get more involved in like the human interface, like signage, or not necessarily brochures, but like presence in the physical world, so that not everything is something you see on a screen, which, by the way, might enable us to interact with people who don't necessarily have phones. The possibility that we may interact with third parties on an individual basis, as other civic volunteer organizations or other companies. That is to say, we can work with one person, another civic volunteer organization that could be many people, could be a nonprofit, could be just a club, or it could be an actual separate business, a company, a corporation. It could be anything. We need to enable a clarity about how our open source initiatives and what happens with those contributions will interact, especially moving forward. So that is to say, if someone, no matter what they are, a business, a company, a corporation, an individual, a club, anything, if we're going to interoperate, if we're going to contribute to a project or an initiative or anything in any way, there has to be clarity that it is irrevocable, that we can use it in perpetuity. You don't want someone to say, I don't want you to use that anymore, and disable our entire deployment and so on. So once it's in, it's in. That's the norm. A couple of particulars: a grant back clause inspired by the Free Software Foundation has been added to our contributing document. Version 1 of our contributing document should be floating through the air any day now, so that it is clear that any contribution to our initiatives is automatically licensed back to the contributor, so you don't sign away your rights. This was a concern someone expressed, and it's sort of implied, but now it's explicit. You are automatically able to take your contributions. Now there's kind of a nuance there. If I submit some edits to a file, I can use my edits, but the original file is not mine. Maybe, probably not. So there's some subtleties there. Hopefully we don't have to deal with that sooner, but it will come up at some point. Sign-off requirements for what is essentially a contributor license agreement granting unlimited use of contributions in perpetuity so that our work is not vulnerable to license squabbles. So this is where sometimes you'll see, especially younger people, aren't completely clear on when they're working for an employer and they want to contribute some of their work, or they did some of their work while they were being paid by the employer, and who owns what. So we have to be clear that the person that's making the contribution has the right to make that contribution. And if it's with a company, it could be an individual or a business contributor license agreement, so that there's clarity. No one's going to come back and say, hey, that we own that intellectual property. And this also applies to anything, not just software. Clear and ubiquitous attribution. This is a new one for some. It says credit given to all contributors for their creative work. So there's always something to point to in the resume, so that everyone knows how our initiatives come to be through the work of civic volunteers, of course. Famously, Code for America was not giving credit attribution to volunteers in a universal way. So paid employees of Code for America would tell volunteers what to do. They would direct them, they would project manage them, etc. And then when it came time to launch things, launch products, make press releases, and so on, oh, who worked on this? Oh, these 4 people. What about volunteers? We'll get back to you. So I said explicitly to the person who I asked that question of at Code for America, shouldn't you just have that information? Shouldn't that be on the first page of the announcement? So that's our policy. That's our attitude here. And finally, I think my voice might just make it. My ears still popped if you're curious. We've gone over Agile for Volunteers in previous episodes, which should enable, if it works as designed, better use of volunteer time, effort, and expertise. It's not magic. We just need to be able to describe what we want to accomplish in bite-sized chunks like user stories or features with whole team collaboration. And then we need to be clear who is doing what and how far along they are, whether the task at hand is coding, editing some documentation, creating an icon, or anything else. So everybody kind of has a sense of where everybody is, so you don't feel like you're working too hard. Like, we should all be comfortable in our collaboration so that we feel like we're accomplishing what we'd like to accomplish without any sort of we don't want to get overly burdened. Oh my God, I'm putting in 40 hours a week. You're the only one doing that. Don't do that. So hopefully Agile for Volunteers will be some methodology. And again, not magic, just a process, some methods, some tools. Hopefully we'll see where it ends up. We have our Project ACT initiative, which I mentioned previously, for easier discovery among civic volunteer organizations. And by the way, this could apply to any organizations. So hopefully we'll start with civic volunteers. So we might connect, communicate, and collaborate without a central authority. Bottom up for the win. And of course, here in Vegas, we have about 40 million visitors from all over each year, in for various reasons: the fun economy, conventions, trade shows, professional sporting events, gambling, gaming, I should say, tourism, and entertainment. It's a great cross-section of the human population on which to try out some innovative ideas. Who knows, they may return home and ask why there isn't more innovation going on in their own neighborhoods. And maybe we could connect with them on that and make that happen. The autonomous cohort transformation. So that's where I will leave it today. I have about 30 minutes on my timer here. Not bad for a Christmas Eve episode where I cannot hear out of my right ear and where my head cold is very clearly having a negative impact on my voice. I will say this morning, when I first woke up, I had a sore throat, but my voice was a little bit clearer. So this is working its way through wherever it's doing its thing, and hopefully I will be back on track for better speaking voice and functioning sinus subsystems. In the meantime, I hope you are having happy holidays. If when you listen to this, you have had happy holidays. And be sure to stay tuned if you are yourself pondering the formation of a civic volunteer organization or any sort of organization that works on open source or open hardware, community elevation projects, etc. We'll see if we can connect people with our autonomous cohort tessellation. A tessellation is a mosaic. So if you can imagine a tile for each participant or each project and how they all fit together in a big mosaic so they can be seen. So stay tuned, and all of these things are coming together. Thank you so much for listening, and now I'm going to have some tea. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.